Merchant ships at sea, driving through the Barents Sea to Murmansk and Archangel, across the Atlantic to Halifax and New York, across the Pacific, the Indian Ocean, the Mediterranean. Below decks, sweating stokers and greasers and engineers. On the bridge, officers. At the lookout and on deck, able seamen. And all the others, all the cooks, wireless operators, apprentices, stewards, carpenters, and donkeymen. These are the men who for 3 years have kept us in arms and food. These are the men who've taken supplies through to Russia. These are the men who've carried our armies overseas. One of them, a 28-year-old able seaman, a Newfoundlander, is packing his bag for another trip. He's been at sea for 12 years, mostly on oil tankers. His bag is not very big. Seamen don't take many clothes to sea these days. One of the few possessions he's managed to save from 4 torpedoed ships is his discharge book. A merchant seaman, a quiet, slow-spoken man.
The first time I was torpedoed was in the Spanish War. Here's the discharge from that ship. She was an oil tanker running in southern Spain. She was torpedoed off Alicante, and everybody managed to get away on this ship. The first time I was torpedoed in this war was on another oil tanker called the Imperial Transport. Here's a picture of her here. She was all in one piece then. We made one voyage on her, outward bound on the second voyage. We were torpedoed about 300 miles off the coast of Scotland. Sunday night when this happened, about 9 o'clock. Most of the crew were below except the watch on deck. I was having a bath at the time, and I went sprawling on the deck. A bucket of water came down over me. The torpedo hit the ship here, you see, right underneath the bridge there. The forward half broke clear of the ship then. You see, broke clear here, and all the bridge went away. We were left on the after part of the ship.
At dawn, the crew held a meeting and decided to try and start the engines and sail what was left of the ship back to Scotland.
We got the engines going and tried to run the ship astern, but she nearly turned over and we had to stop the engines. Then they tried to go ahead, and we were going ahead about 4 knots for 3 days.
On the 3rd day, the Imperial Transport was sighted by British destroyers. Somehow, she'd managed to wallow nearly 100 miles towards home. When asked if they wanted to abandon ship, the crew said no, they would keep on.
So we started off again that night. The destroyer stood by in case something might happen. We were steaming all that day. The sea was getting rough. The bulkhead started to crack up underneath here. The captain aboard the destroyer sent back for everybody to abandon the ship. So they sent over the boats and took us all aboard the destroyer.
By then, deep-sea tugs had arrived and the Imperial Transport was taken in tow. Later, a new half was fitted. Today, she's at sea again.
For the next couple of years, I was on coastal ships and different types of ships until last year I joined this ship called the Avila Star. We made one trip to South America. On the way home, about 300 miles north of the Azores, we were torpedoed again. This happened about 9 o'clock on a Sunday night, exactly the same time as the Imperial Transport was torpedoed. When the torpedo hit the ship, dead amidships, the ship took a bad list to port, about 30 degrees. Everybody came running along the decks to the boats, and we managed to get most of the boats away. The boat that I was in, number 7 boat here, we were slow in getting the boat in the water. There was a lot of passengers had to get in, and we were the last boat to get in the water. We were just getting ready to cast off the line when everybody got in, when the second torpedo entered the ship underneath our boat, and the blast from the torpedo threw everybody in the air and wrecked the boat. First torpedo hit the ship about here, and the second one hit it just about here. We found ourselves in the water, struggling to try to get to the next boat that was just ahead. We managed to get in that boat. That was partly wrecked too, and there was about 15 of us got aboard this boat and managed to cut the line away and get her clear of the ship before she sank. We stayed all night in that boat. Some of the fellows were injured. One man had both his legs broken, and another chap was complaining of his ribs. The next morning, about 6 or 7 o'clock, the other boats came over to us, and one boat took half of the crowd, and another boat took the other half. It was then decided to set the course for Lisbon. Everybody in the boat agreed. There was about 39 in the boat, including two girl passengers and 3 male passengers.
The navigation instruments had been smashed. If they ran south for the Azores, they might easily miss them, so they chose the longer journey to Lisbon.
The first week on the way to Lisbon, we had pretty good weather, and everybody was in pretty good spirits, expecting to be picked up any day. And we had a few cigarettes. They gave us 1 cigarette a day. They rationed them out, you see. About a week after we left the ship, the weather began to get a bit rough, and we had to heave to, throw out the sea anchor, and stay all night because the wind was too bad to go ahead on. One of the sails carried away, the gypsum.
Every 24 hours, they had half a cup of water each, not enough to clean your teeth with. A small square of chocolate. A child would eat 2 or 3 pieces like it in a morning and still manage a good dinner. And a tablet of malted milk.
At the beginning of the second week, everything seemed to go wrong. The wind was against us all the time, and we couldn't make any headway.
The wind was steadily against them, and they slowly drifted south towards the coast of Africa.
One of the passengers went crazy and jumped over the side. And nearly every day for that week, one of the fellows died, and we had to bury them at sea. The 3 passengers, they died that week. One chap that was had his leg broken, gangrene set in, and he died too. Well, about 17 days, that was the following week, 3 Portuguese planes came out and circled above the boat. 2 of them dropped water and biscuits, and one of our fellows swam out and got one, and we managed to hook another one in with a boat hook. Everybody was pretty well cheerful that day. We were expecting to be picked up. As a matter of fact, one of the planes dropped a message that they were sending help out to us. And we all felt that the next day that the ship would come along and pick us up. Well, the next day, we kept our spirits up and expecting to be picked up at any minute. But nothing happened that day. and nothing happened on the next day. That was the 19th day. 2 men died on that day. The next day, about midday, we were all very quiet in the boat when one fellow astern shouted, "There's a Portuguese warship." Well, this was a Portuguese sloop, came alongside us and took us on board. This picture was taken just as we were coming alongside. This is the Portuguese warship here. We were all very weak, and they had to carry most of the crowd aboard. That's the second officer there getting carried aboard. When they got us on board, they gave us their bunks, and they slept on the deck. There wasn't much room aboard this ship. So they gave us all the accommodation, and they put the 2 girls in the captain's room, I think. We were on that sloop for 2 days, going to Lisbon. They gave us some milk and tea, and some fellows even drank a glass of beer. Here's some of the fellows in the tender taking us ashore at Lisbon. This fellow here was the fellow that swam out and got the water that the Portuguese plane dropped. And this fellow here, he swam out and got the message. Here's one of the girls getting carried ashore at Lisbon. They were both very cheerful all the time. We were in the hospital in Lisbon for about a month. They all treated us very well there. Most of the chaps had saltwater boils on their legs and big carbuncles. After a month, we came out and were convalescent about 2 weeks in Lisbon. Most of the time there we spent arguing with the British consul, try to get some money. Some of the chaps wanted to have a little more beer than they were having already. Well, after that, the consul decided to send us back. So he sent us on the ship going to Gibraltar. And we were torpedoed on that ship about 50 miles outside. We all rushed to the boats and managed to get them away. 2 boats. One of the boats was smashed up. And we just pulling away from the ship when the submarine, somebody shouted in the boat, "There's a submarine." And the periscope was coming towards the boat. We saw at first that she was going to ram us, but she just passed by about 4 feet from the boat. As a matter of fact, one of the fellows had to lift up an oar to let the periscope pass by. About 5 minutes after that, there was another explosion, and the second torpedo hit that ship. She was a light ship, and she didn't go down with the first torpedo, so they put the second torpedo in her. There was 2 Spanish trawlers hanging around at the time, and when daylight broke, they came over and picked us up.
That is a merchant seaman's story. Torpedoed 4 times, 7 days on a leaking hulk, 3 weeks in an open boat, cold, dark nights, hot, burning days, dry tongues, tight stomachs, and mates dying. But the other side of the story is one of victory. Convoys coming safely into port with aviation spirit, food, guns, and tanks. Every convoy brought safely to port is a battle won, and the men who win those battles are the merchant seamen.